Well. Bit of a mixed story when it comes to the inflation data, ladies and gentlemen. What can we do? I mean, hold on a second. I always have to do this for my live. Always do this, bad boy. Gotta make sure that we get that stuff. Anyways, now with that being said, CPI comes in a little bit hot. Year on year seems to now be the focus point, but the actual core price index came in lower. Now, we've got some news about the banks. JP Morgan's done pretty well. Wells Fargo, the same story. Now we're waiting for Citibank, BlackRock, Bank of New York to declare their earnings. And usually when one bank's doing good, the other's going to end up following suit anyways. So that could be explaining why the stock market is making a significant move to the upside. But this is all being driven on the actual news for NVIDIA about the changes in the way they're going to be able to do business with China. So they've been given access now to start selling the H2 chips. We're going to be talking about that anyways. But that's good news for NVIDIA, and it's gapping up at the open. So that's probably why you're seeing the stock market moving up. Now, other news, Bitcoin. Did anyone take something off the table? Did you pull some money? Or did you just think, you know what, it's time to buy at the all-time highs because Bitcoin is going to go. It's never going to go, but it will keep going after it pulls back, grabs a couple of bids, and then just continues with the move to the upside. Today's live stream, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to try to keep it short and sweet as usual. We're just going to break down where we are in the stock market. We're going to dive into a little bit of volume. We're going to look at what's going on with Powell. A successor is now all in the cards. Besant was saying earlier on that they are on the hunt to get him replaced. Now, I mean, Powell, I am going to miss the dude when he goes. I really will miss him. But Trump, I'm waiting for Trump to put out a tweet in regards to inflation. We're probably going to hear him say there is no inflation, get those rates cut and what have you. But expectations for interest rates to get cut starting to get a little bit interesting. They're starting to reduce the idea of maybe getting a cut in September, but I'll be talking about that as we get into the live. So with that being said, we're going to break it all down for you, help you understand what's going on, and then let you guys be. All right? So make sure you're hitting the like button whilst we're coming out with all this flavor. Let's break it all down for you, ladies and gentlemen. Here we go. So stocks rise and treasury yields fall on tame CPI. Don't need to read the article because I can see what's going on already just from the title. Stocks rising, treasury yields fall. That's good news. When the yields go down, stocks go up. Why? Because tech stocks are subject to changes in interest rates, and the yields are the expectation of the future of what it may look like in terms of interest rates. Well, if the yields are going down, it means investors are like, okay, that means we're not going to be getting higher yields anymore on the US dollar, so I better go and get myself some bonds and try and lock in some yield at the levels that they're being offered at. Now, what's interesting about the article itself, it says that CPI has come in tame. However, when we go into it, it does say here, this was a good report overall in line with expectations. The market is more focused on year over year, but I will say that the fact for the 5 straight months that the month-on-month headline CPI number came in below expectations, that is meaningful. But then it goes on to say that with Tuesday's data, it was hotter in June. That's the thing. Now we go into the actual data itself and you can see that we've come in at 0.2% on the core CPI. And this is the main measure that the Fed uses to work out pricing stability. Remember, the 2 mandated targets of that, or goals that the Fed has to maintain price stability and, of course, an efficient labor market. Well, prices are coming down, but is it factoring tariffs? Remember, by the time we get to the fall, that's when we're going to know where we are with the tariffs. Speaking of tariffs, the Eurozone and the US, with regards to this 30% tariff that Trump wants to put into play, it's coming into a little bit of a stalemate, which is a little bit of a problem. Okay, now, if we do hear any news regarding that, because some ECB speakers have been coming out today saying that they are going to stall on countermeasures for the tariffs, which could be in line for a potential deal heading into the deadline of August the 1st. But Trump's already set a deadline and he's extended it. Maybe with the stalling of the Euro talks could effectively lead to another extension, which the market then is pretty much not going to be taking Trump seriously when it comes to these tariffs. Going into the data, you can see here CPI year on year came in at 2.7%, higher than the previous reading, higher than the previous expectations. Now, look, when it comes to that, you've got this Empire State Manufacturing Index that's come out, which shows a positive reading of 5.5. When we go into the actual readings themselves, there's not been any consistency with the manufacturing index. You can see it's been minus 16, minus 9, minus 8, minus 20. There's not been a clear trend, but it's now trading positive. And the last time it traded positive was in February. Is this going to be a good reading? Does this show us that the economy is doing okay from a manufacturer's point of view? Who knows? But that could be a little bit of an inflated reading. Why? Because companies are all trying to prepare themselves for what tariffs are going to look like when they come into play. So naturally, that's going to end up sending companies to start buying lots and lots of things all up front so that they can prepare themselves for any future costs in the future that would actually come in higher. And then they're going to have to put those costs onto the consumer. Okay. Now, with that being said, quickly going over into the story right now that's hitting the market. Kevin Marsh, what the hell? He's done a full U-turn. This guy was always about holding interest rates. Now, all of a sudden, he's down for the cuts and he's looking to take Powell's job. I'm gutted. I'm absolutely gutted. Seven says here, Kevin Walsh now supports rate cuts and shrinking the Fed's balance sheet as he campaigns to replace Jerome Powell. So, look, he's just getting, in my opinion, he's being primed by Trump's administration. Cut the rates, cut the rates, cut the rates. Let's get you in there as quick as we can and let's cut the rates. Well, where are investors' heads at? Here we go. So September is the expected time that they think the rates are going to get cut. Now, this was at a reading of 63%, and this came in at roughly around 36%. But now that's changed. It's now gone down to 59.9, and now this is 38.6. So by September, investors' expectations of interest rates being cut, they're betting that there is a possibility or a 38% chance that we're going to keep rates at 4.25 and 4.5%. Going into the July, they're not really talking about rate cuts in July, given that it's now expected at 97.4% to keep the rates high at 4.25, 4.5%. Speaking of which, check this out. Bitcoin, 3.5 billion in profit taking, ladies and gentlemen. It goes up, you take profit. It goes down, you start buying it, okay? And that's what's going on. It says here, according to the Glassnode, Bitcoin investors made an incredible 3.5 billion in realized profits over the last 24 hours in the biggest single day cash out of the year. So you're asking yourself, everyone across the board is telling you to hold on, hold on, hold on. But investors are selling. It tells you that people are in it for the money and not for the tech. That's sad. Bitcoin whales pull off the biggest cash out of the year. Shows you that they don't care about the price of Bitcoin or the future of it. The thing is now, whatever price Bitcoin is, they're going to buy it when it drops and they sell it when it rises. And that's what you're getting, okay? Now, we welcome this. Of course, we welcome the profit taking because now there's more money to be retained to then go back into Bitcoin at the time it goes on the dip. Let's have a look at the dip. Here we go. So check this out. For the last hour, there's been 1,964 traders that have been liquidated, wherein XRP liquidated 1.23 million of that 2.93 million. If any of you are trading XRP, don't even tell me that you're part of that. I'm serious. Please, don't stress me out. Any of you traded XRP and got liquidated on an asset that moves 2-3 cents a day, how are you getting liquidated on that asset? It doesn't make sense. Bitcoin goes from 110,000 all the way up to 120,000. Naturally, there's volatility in Bitcoin, but there's nothing in XRP. There's more volatility in USD, USDT than there is XRP. How are you getting liquidated? Now, none of you might be getting liquidated. I hope not anyways. But anyone that is new passing through and they're asking themselves, why did I get liquidated on XRP? Yes, why did you? It's a shame. Please don't trade that asset. Sell it so I can buy it. Anyway, so we've got Bitcoin showing some very interesting behavior, but we've had a lot of quite a decent collection of bids. So you've had 6.6 million at 116,555, and then you've got 14 million, which the initial order amount was for 2.9 million, and 14.8 was transacted. What does that tell you? Well, it tells you that they're eyeing these ranges. This is why I say to you, focus on when price drops, because that's where you're going to get the understanding of commitment, because they don't buy it when it rises. Retail does, because they're doing it on the back of being scared they're going to miss out on the next big thing. Go over X, right? Go over to X and pull up Saturday night, okay? And go and have a look at all the posts on Bitcoin. It's happening, it's happening, it's happening. Yes, there is all sorts of things happening in cryptocurrency in terms of the Congress and passing of bills and putting crypto and Bitcoin into treasuries. Michael Saylor and the $500 trillion market cap for Bitcoin in the future, the $13 million Bitcoin in 2049, and all these other companies adding Bitcoin to their balance sheets. It's wonderful news. But focus when it drops, not when it rises. Because if you're focused on when to buy it when it rises, you're missing the whole point of buying the dip. You're missing it. You want to sell it as it rises. You don't buy something of value to sell it at a discount. No, you don't invest in houses or real estate, do them all up to sell it at a loss. Now, depending on the way your business has gone and the way things have happened, that naturally happens as well. But your intention is to buy it when it's low and then you sell it when it's high. And that's why you've got $3.5 billion worth of profit being taken by whales. Speaking of which, Satoshi wallet moves 4.68 billion in Bitcoin after 14 years. So this guy is waking up. It says here the dormant wallet since 2011 has transferred 40,000 Bitcoin. Okay, and man, that is a very handsome amount of Bitcoin that he has got. It says here the transfer began with an initial movement of 9,000 Bitcoin, 1 billion, followed by an additional 7,843 Bitcoin, 927 million transfer. Okay, so the latest update on Look on Chain was done on the July the 15th, and the Bitcoin OG has now transferred a total of 40,000 Bitcoin. You know what? Round of applause to that guy, man. What a guy. What a guy. He has absolutely smacked it, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, then now quickly going over other concepts that we need to dive into. Here we go. Arkham. Just quickly having a look at the ETF purchases. What? Don't even give me that. Don't even give me that. Oh, please. Come on, man. Don't do this to me. Oh, bloody hell. Oh, never mind. It's not doing it. So the balance is probably around 700,000. I can't see anything just yet, but I'll be updating that for you guys later on. And tonight I'm going to be doing a video, which is very important for you all to help you understand why on earth is Buffett doing this behavior. Why is he selling certain stocks? And Buffett is a cyclical man. So he could be letting us into something. So make sure you tune into tonight's video because I'm going to be diving into all of that. Quickly going into the stock market right now, ladies and gentlemen, just going to have a look at the NASDAQ in terms of volume, just to understand where we are. We are approaching all-time highs on the NASDAQ composite, but volume isn't present, which makes sense, doesn't it? You know, you obviously want to see the market rising with no volume. So all divergence traders will understand what I'm talking about. Price is going up, volume is not present. What does that set you up for? Anyways, with that being said, quickly going over into, what was it? JP Morgan. So JP Morgan has done relatively well on its earnings. It came in and beat its earnings per share. So we're expecting a little bit of movement from JP Morgan. Quickly going over into NVIDIA right now, because NVIDIA had effectively gapped up before the open. So you can see here that NVIDIA's share price right now is at the 172. It's at all-time highs. The market cap is just continuously going and going. It's not stopping. I think it's trading above the $4 trillion mark. Let's quickly go and have a look at that. And NVIDIA's market cap, just quickly have a look. Here we go, $4 trillion. And that's now going to be more because it's trading at all-time highs. Look at that, man, up 4.75% in the pre-market plays as well. So that's very, very good news for NVIDIA. And that's only because of what's going on in the sense of this chip that is being authorized to let them sell to China. And that just goes to show that Trump, in essence, even though tariffs are coming into play, he realizes that AI is what's fueling this move to the upside across the board. So he really does need to sustain that. And given that there is a lot of investment in terms of tech back into the US, investors are going to be like, hold on, man, if you're making it difficult for a company that we're heavily invested in to do business, then why should, what's the benefit in that? So I actually believe the administration is being a little bit more relaxed when it comes to tech, which is great news for anyone holding NVIDIA stock. Okay. Now, with that being said, quickly going over and having a look at other assets across the board, you've got Ethereum. Excuse me. Ethereum has done, it's had a good move. It's doing relatively well, ladies and gentlemen, but it's stuck in this consolidation. And I do believe that there is more to come with Ethereum, but I just think unless Bitcoin really starts to roll over and start coming in to collect the bids, then that's where I believe Ethereum's going to then start making the move. Going into the Bitcoin dominance is still at the 64.18 zone, and it is pulling back, of course, because people are taking profits. But I mean, even if we go over to Solana as well, Solana's holding out relatively well inside of this range right now. It's consolidating sideways. And if we do get a break above the 169, then we could be getting primed for quite a long-term play. But there is this vector candle over here that I'd be looking for them to try and come and take, which will take us very close towards the $200 mark. $200 plus for Solana, I would say that is the best place for it, in my opinion. I do expect it to go towards that point. But the thing with Ethereum as well, ladies and gentlemen, is this. There is lots of staking happening. Remember what I said yesterday, 30% of the supply is locked up in staking. So naturally, when you're hearing about companies adding Ethereum to their treasury, the Ethereum ETF and purchases from BlackRock and what have you, that kind of puts things into perspective and makes us think, okay, at some point, Ethereum is going to make a move to the upside. It's just whether you can actually absorb this consolidation that's happening in Ethereum right now. So just make sure that you're patient with Ethereum. And then, of course, if there is that rotation of people coming out of Bitcoin taking profit, remember, even though, in my opinion, when Bitcoin goes up, everything goes up, okay? Even though there's going to be profit taking on Bitcoin, I don't think Bitcoin is done with this move. The data coming out on the inflation is giving investors the idea, okay, maybe we are going to be in line for a rate cut. But do I think they'll be cutting prematurely? I do think so, because we don't know where we are with the tariffs. There is nothing coming to play. And if you go and consider all of the data that's been coming out, I mean, look at last week's core durable goods orders. Sorry, the previous reading came in at 16.8. What does that tell you? They projected 8, but it came in at 16.8. Why? Because companies are trying to just buy as much of whatever it is that they can to prevent themselves having to absorb a higher cost when the tariffs come into play. So you're not getting a true reading of the economy when you're having to react to that situation. Equally with the manufacturing data that came out today, came in positive for the first time since February. It's telling you that they're doing something in the economy, or should I say manufacturing, to prevent what it looks like in the future regarding tariffs. And they do have the expectation that inflation is going to go up again because of these tariffs. You only need to go over and have a look at the bonds market to put that into perspective. The bonds are still trading negative and low. And as long as the bonds keep on trading lower, then that obviously tells you that investors, even though today the yields are trading negative per se, they're still relatively high, which means investors still believe that the future expectations of interest rates is going to be higher. Thus, they are demanding more of a rate of return before they can start buying US bonds. And this is the big problem as to why the dollar dominance is just taking a smack, but now it's starting to make a move up. I'm saying it to you all now. Do not sleep on the dollar. The dollar's moving up, Bitcoin's moving up, NASDAQ's moving up, but the dollar is only moving up because investors are starting to cotton on to the idea that maybe now is the time to start putting things into dollars. Why? Because the deal with the Eurozone and Donald Trump, that's going to be a bit of a problem when you think about it. Why? Well, the Eurozone is cutting its interest rates and it wants to cut again, but you're devaluing your euro by cutting the interest rates. Why? Because investors overseas are going to say, hold on a second, why am I going to go and invest with you when your yields are so low? You're cutting your interest rates. I'm not going to get a benefit from that. So what does that mean? Well, it means now I look at the euro's price and say, hold on a second, euro now is more valuable than the US dollar. What freedom does that give me? Well, it gives me the ability to go and take my euros and buy a bunch of dollars, and then I can put more dollars to work. And on the back of that transaction, when they sell euros, convert it to dollars, dollar starts to appreciate in its value. And the investors that have been using euro to convert into dollars will then take that and chuck it into the dollar and try and get some yield because the interest rates on the dollar are still high. So even though inflation's gone up, in principle, the dollar itself is moving up. Technically, inflation is bad news. But why is it going up? Because investors know that that's going to have an impact on the interest rates, which means the Fed's going to be holding on the interest rates, less likely to be cutting. So investors are now plowing into the dollar to generate the yield. Does that make sense, ladies and gentlemen? Lawmakers are going to pass all crypto regulations bills this week. Great stuff for the dollar dominance. This is true. This is true. They're going to pass so much with cryptocurrency. And that's why I say to you, always monitor Bitcoin when it takes a drop. When it's rising, that's when you should be looking to sell. When it drops, that's when you pay close attention to it. Like I said earlier on the order flow of Bitcoin, this $14 million order right there, ladies and gentlemen, where was it? There you go. 14.8 million. It was originally 2.9. People are paying attention to these zones and they want to step in and try and grab a bit of BTC. Okay? So take that into consideration. Now, for any of you traders out there, if you haven't done so already, go check out BTCC because they are updating their products. They've got, of course, gold, SPX, NASDAQ, if you want to exploit movements, because sometimes Bitcoin doesn't move, but there is stocks on there as well, and you can trade commodities and Forex. So if anyone that wants to take part in that, you don't need a VPN or a KYC to take advantage of that if you join with the Traders Reality link that's in the description. All right, so go check that bad boy out. And other than that, ladies and gentlemen, as we go into the open very shortly, the market is going to actually react to this CPI data, and NASDAQ is trading at significant highs. Just pay close attention to it because it might get a little bit tricky. Be mindful of Donald Trump coming out with any comments about inflation, but more importantly, anything to do with trade talks. That trade talk story with the euro is, in my opinion, one of the biggest discussions that needs to be ended. They need to get a deal sorted so that we know whether the dominance of the dollar is going to continue up or is the euro going to just take a nosedive because there's talks that could be breaking down and no deal is coming into play. So we got to pay close attention to that bad boy. If you are new, be sure to like and subscribe, and I will be tuning into you all later on. Make sure you watch tonight's video because we're talking about Warren Buffett and where he could be potentially expecting the markets to end up based on his latest purchases. All right? Mad love and respect, guys. Take care of yourselves, and I'll tune into you all later. Peace.